Uh, Hi everyone. My name is Nukulkit. Um, I have a visiting position at SUNY Purchase. I just graduated last summer. So, yeah. um, anyway, my presentation is about inequality and the capital controversy. When I mean capital controversy, I mean the controversies in the theory of capital. But, well, anyway, my intention is that to get some attention about capital theory and our discussion in the history of thought, and also instability of capitalism or whatnot, or adjustment to capitalism. So, what is the capital controversy? It can mean a lot of things to a lot of people, but I think it's a theory of value, a political economy of why some people are rich and some are poor. And I would say that it's actually a labor theory of value and marginal theory of value thing. But more importantly, though, I think that capital theory is actually a connection between striving to make a science out of morality. To me, I see capital theory as that connection. Okay, so the biggest question is probably like, what is capital? What is the price and what is the value of capital? So I mentioned here the socialist calculation debate because I think that's one of the. I mean, it's not, but it's not now. But to me, it's actually the problem of knowledge is that we don't know, how to define capital, and we can't find the price and value of it. But the more rigorous debate that we have is actually the Cambridge capital controversy, and the Cambridge one is like between the Cambridge, Massachusetts, and the Cambridge, England. But in this paper, I argue though that they actually has kind of the same mindset about stuff. So I put here that the price and value of capital because we don't know what it is and can we define it or not. But in the end, it's about the use of knowledge and then the distribution of income between labor and capital. But I think we are on a new phase of history. So new context, yes. Injustice, inequality. I put inflation there because last time, this was arguing that the last crisis was inflation, stagflation stuff. So just to get attention, I think that we have a new crisis, which is inequality. Anyway, but injustice, inequality, inflation, all of those, in my opinion, they are, represent instability and unstable capitalism. I don't want to, that's why I think a Keynesian can solve it. Anyway, I have to complain though because history of economic thought, I think doing capital theory is very old-fashioned. I think doing this is like a dying breed of people who trying to talk something about capital theory. So when I heard like our society kind of being dismissal about capital theory, or kind of saying it's outdated, I was feeling belittled a bit on that and sad. Anyway, to me, again, I would emphasize that capital theory, I see it as a connection between economic science and moral philosophy. Okay, so what is inequality from capital accumulation? Then the new context that I have is inequality, injustice, and unstable system, right? But the thing that people don't talk much about it is that it's actually technology. What I mean is that human nature of increasing returns. If you know the first 3 chapters of Adam Smith is actually about the division of labor and how human cooperation, if we cooperate and then we do specialization, we actually going to grow more and more. So I don't think people talk much about increasing returns. So I think it's a missing link that I can add into it. But then again, it's been debated, forever. So anyway, disruptive technology, we have what? We have unemployment, social unrest, maybe. It's not anymore because a lot of people say that during neoliberalism, we don't have a win-win consumer-based or worker-based capitalism anymore. And you have a long list of literature. Yes, Piketty for sure, right? And then you have Marxists saying that the rate of profit go down all the time. So this is a growth and distribution problem, and also some methodology thing on what is capital. I argue here, though, that the Cambridge has one thing in mind, which is, they see Keynesian adjustment, and they try to think that this is a win-win capitalism, which is a stable one. So, I put a question here, is that inequality or elitism is the biggest threat to capitalism and natural liberty? I mean, I don't mean to use the word, natural, as given, so I don't want, don't blame me on that. So, okay, liberty, freedom, I guess, maybe. So, again, I emphasize that capital theory is the connection between those. All right, so in the paper, I compared three views, very pluralistic, okay, if to, just to say it. I compare Piketty, I compare, modern Marxist theories, and then I compare the Cambridge Keynesian view of technical progress to it, and I put some assessment about the methodology too. So, Piketty was pretty clear that he admired the French tradition scholar more than Robert Solow or even Simon Kuznets. He doesn't like theoretical economics at all. And if you look at his paper, his book and his work, it's all about gathering data and then, building the model from the data and stuff. So he tried to say that, he doesn't like theoretical economics. He uses empirical research a lot. Well, so I compare, though, to the modern Marxists. They care about both empirical and also theoretical. Why? Because Marx says something about the falling rate of profit. The falling rate of profit meaning that capitalism itself is unstable, and that falling rate of profit, I will talk about that later. But again, during the '60s, there is a Japanese economist. His name is Nobu Okishio. He proved that it's impossible for capitalists to adopt a technological progress that will lower the rate of profit. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense, right? How come capitalists will adopt any technical progress that will lower their own profit? So, there's a, practically it doesn't sound. And also, he also used like a, not econometrics, metric algebra, and I'm thinking about that von Neumann, proof on why it's impossible to adopt a lower rate of profit with technical progress. And then I still compare to the Cambridge Keynesian. So in my opinion, even though they fought, for like bitterly between Massachusetts and also England, I think they have something in common, that they see adjustment of capitalism and win-win as a stuff that common assumption, I guess. And I also put on that too that John Robinson see this as a metaphysical question. Okay, by metaphysical, that means a lot of things to a lot of people too. But Joan Robinson has her little book about philosophy of economics, and she discussed about metaphysical of real value and also metaphysical of moral position. So Solo has an anecdote. He reenacted that into his paper about the growth theory. He said that he endured Joan Robinson metaphysical until she admit that a constant capital output ratio will do. So, I would put out that it is post-war win-win style life facts, and also it is also about a metaphysical concept of, full employment. All right, so what is the constant capital output ratio mean though? The constant capital output ratio mean that, you always will have a win-win labor and labor and profit. Yeah. Okay, so in the paper, I use some mathematics. I'm kind of disagree of, why, some economists just use a derivative needlessly. I was an engineer though, but I don't know why economists tend to overcomplicate stuff. But I use this. It's just a accounting. What do you call accounting identity? So if you see, one is equal to the wage and then and profit. So the wage rate and then the labor and then the profit rate and then the capital. Anyway, it's just an accounting identity just to show you guys, what are those views saying about what happened to those variables. So in Piketty, you have inherent inequality and hierarchy. You have the rate of profit more than the growth. So that's a famous assertion that he has. He said that because of the rate of profit is more than growth, that means that capital and wealth is the same thing and it's always have an inequality conclusion. And in the book, he said that we have a tax remedy. You can do tax on income and capital. But again, there is a paradox in the capital theory because we don't know exactly, we can't separate, individual income from capital gains. Because individual can have capital, right? But then, you talk about inequality of 99% and 1%. But then again, we have a separation of labor and capital. All right, that's one of it. And then in Marx, though, it's pretty doctrinate in his writing, because one of the crises of capitalism is that instability from falling rate of profit. Constant capital go up all the time. Constant capital mean C. He has that on his book, and the rate of profit is equal to the surplus over by constant capital and variable capital. We know that the constant capital go up all the time, so it obviously that the rate of profit go down, and that's what leads to the collapse of capitalism. But as I mentioned before, Okishio theorem disproves Marx because it doesn't make sense for capitalists to adopt any technical progress that will lower their own rate of profit. Microfraction, why it doesn't make sense. So, in the paper I say that, well, we have a Cambridge Keynesian way of looking at this too. It's a win-win capitalism. And then I refer to the Harvard Dogma. Why do I refer to the Harvard Dogma? Because it was a condition, it's a mathematical formulation of how capitalism adjusts the Harvard Dogma growth model. And in the aftermath of this, I refer to Pasinetti because he was the person who coined the phrase, the Cambridge equation. The Cambridge equation is that R is equal to the natural rate of growth over by the saving of the capitalist. All right, and then I've emphasized a lot in the paper about long period Keynesian adjustment to full employment principle, and I argue that as well as John Robinson, that the full employment one is the metaphysical position of the Keynesian. So what did Piketty say? In his book, page 234. Yeah, he said that technology, like the market, has neither limits or morality. He used capital and wealth interchangeably. And his measurement is pretty much exposed, meaning that he take it as given. Whatever he see, we take it from the financial sector and stuff, so it's given. inequality between capital and labor, or between individual and or capital. So it's a paradox here because you can't separate individual who own capital by the individual who work in it. All right. So the theory, he said that you have two degrees of freedom in it because the pie is the profit share, and the profit share is equal to the rate of profit multiplied by capital over by capital output ratio. So he said that the profit share is determined by the rate of profit, right? And then also the capital output ratio. So he explained that if we have inequality, it has to come from two of this. But what he didn't realize is that these two measurements is actually connected to each other. So basically, if R more than G causing the bias in technology, it's meaning that his 2 degrees of freedom is not a degree of freedom anymore because the two of them are related, and it's impossible to separate them. So in neoclassical term, we have this solution already, and it's called Hicks elasticity of substitution. Okay, in a neoclassical growth model, you use this. Okay, and there's a lot of inconsistency because of this. And in neoclassical theory, it's less than 1, but Piketty say it's more than 1. So there's a lot of stuff on that. But I don't think it's related to us much because I just want to show you guys that Piketty capital theory is inconsistent. All right, Marx too. I would say Marx too. I mean, and I didn't mean a transformation problem or anything. What I meant is that this is a Marx bias technical progress theory. I mentioned before, right, that the Okishio theorem disproved Marx about technical adoption. So the modern Marxist theorists, I mean, some of them not call themselves Marxists, but well, they work on it. So okay. They try to solve. I mean, they try to make a leeway out of that because mathematically, if you are a capitalist, you will not adopt anything that will lower your rate of profit. So they say that there's a thing called a viable elliptical technological frontier. I put a picture there, just to show graphically in a sense, but just look nice, I guess. But what you can use it mathematically to understand it. But what happened is that usually we choose labor saving innovation or capital saving innovation, and it look nice. It's like a round thing that you can choose between them. But in Marx bias technical progress, they have to assume that it's it's perverse, it bent backward. So basically, to bypass the Okishio theorem, the Marx theorists they need to get a new theory of doing this. So I put an assessment in that even though they have some consistent on a capital theory, but still the rate of profit still connect to technology in terms of capital or capital output ratio. And it's rely heavily on, that technology will destroy us or something like that. Okay, the robot will conquer the world, like Terminator 3 or whatever. Okay. All right. So and then I point out to the Cambridge equation from Pasinetti growth and distribution textbook. As far as I know, I mean, I hope I'm not wrong, but that's the first time Pasinetti coined the words the Cambridge equation. I mean, there's another Cambridge equation which is a money Cambridge equation, but what I meant is that the growth Cambridge equation. Okay, and it comes from the Harrod-Domar problem. So we have a solution of a Caldor-Pasinetti solution of this, and if you solve the solution, you have that the rate of profit is equal to 1 over by the rate of saving and then the natural rate of growth. Okay, so the assumption that they have, which is, I mentioned that a lot in the paper, is that they have a long period full employment. Well, what does that mean though? And like there's a controversy on this. Samuelson, called Cawdor Chong Baptist Cawdor because of this, because Chong Baptist say, right? But then because Cawdor said that this is full employment, and what Samuelson think that like Cawdor should be a Keynesian, not a say. So there's a lot of controversy in it, in a sense, and a lot of people think that where is the principle of effective demand on it. So I would say that a fair assessment, but I think that the Keynesian, they need to think a lot about the long period adjustment of capitalism. So I give them some slack on that. So all right, but in the end, though, you have separate the rate of profit in the Harrod-Domar problem to separate them out. The rate of profit is equal to the rate of growth, natural rate of growth. I mean, what is natural? Okay, that's tough, but that's what they use. The rate of profit is equal to the natural rate of growth. So in the end, capital become the adjustment variable. Okay, so growth and distribution, the long period position of capital, we have a Keynesian stability condition into it. And then we have the only degree of freedom in this framework is the rate of profit. So at the end of the paper, I use some accounting identity to show you the difference between their views. We have Piketty views. You see that the labor share go down all the time, and then the profit rate go up, and the whole capital thing just go up. So basically, if you take a derivative differential equation on this, the system is unstable. Okay, Piketty, that's why he said we need to tax stuff. All right. For Marx too, that's obviously his conclusion because he wants to prove that capitalism is unstable. The rate of the labor share go down, the rate of profit go down, but the capital output ratio go up because of perverse bias, technical progress. Okay, for the Keynesian though, I tend to argue that they have a stable system, but and the capital become the adjustment variable. I argue that the Keynesian paradigm add this full employment condition to the debate in the capital theory. All right, that come back to our point of what is the concept of capital. Yes, information, knowledge, the price and value of capital, and the distribution of income. Okay, so you see though, even though I claim to be a pluralist, but I left out the Austrian view of capital, right? I left out the Austrian view of capital. Well, first is that I need to confess that I'm not confident enough to write about it. I'm confident about talking about it though, and I love to if you guys have comment about capital theory in the Austrian view. But because the Austrian view, I don't think they have, didn't say much about crisis and adjustment. They're talking about business cycle and malinvestment, but not crisis. Okay, but mainly because I'm not confident enough to write about it. So, but I'm writing about it right now. I mean, a new paper. Okay, so I'm trying to say something about the knowledge problem with the adjustment Keynesian. All right, what I'm trying to do is try to raise a question about capital theory, because I feel belittled a bit. That capital theory not important anymore. I think it's very important because it's a connection between moral and science. Okay, Keynes wrote at the time of the Great Depression and the two Great War. To me, if our liberal process and adjustment fail, there might be a catastrophic adjustment. And I would argue too that those are spontaneous order. I like to, I twist Hayek, but yes, I twist it. And in the end, I think capital is the adjustment variable in the long period. I would love to talk about Mises capital theory, but I think there's a difference in causality here, okay? Because Mises used entrepreneur to determine that. But I put rule of law institution here though, because in the Austrian view, rule of law is supposed to be like a referee, and then you get the outcome, right? But in the Keynesian view, I would say rule of law and institution would make adjustment. So a causality for sure. All right, so what do I mean by metaphysical? I invoke Adam Smith. He didn't say that, but a little bit. Knowledge, the price of capital and inequality outcome. So Hume and Smith, they have a science of man, right? The whole thing, politics and economics. And I would argue a little bit that the invisible hand itself is a metaphysical concept. I take this from the poor man Smith theory of moral sentiment. He said that the rich only select from the heap what is most precious and agreeable. They consume little more than the poor. They are led by an invisible hand. So I don't know what he meant by, some people say he meant that the invisible hand of Jupiter. So, but is that natural order? Or, I shouldn't use the word natural carelessly, but still. But there's something order of the science of man here, and to make a nearly the same distribution. Okay, because I like the win-win situation, so I put it there. Of the necessity of life, advance the interest of the society, and afford the means to the multiplication of species. So, yeah, to me, history of thought, has a science of morality, and I would urge that, capital theory is very important to our discussion of political economy, especially in this time of inequality and instability. So, thanks.
So you started and you ended with the idea that capital theory is trying to make a science out of morality.
Yes.
And then you ended by also saying that that is why it is relevant.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if I missed why is it relevant. And if I did miss it, could you repeat it?
Well, okay, why? All right. So we all think about, we all think about capitalism, right? And when we're trying to find causality on something, and it's about the problem of knowledge, and we we all think like methodology of what we're doing, what is truth and not truth, but so on the one hand, we talk about individual liberty a lot. We talk about how the society work, but on the other hand, we talk about the distribution of income. We talk about why some people are poor and why some people are rich. But in my understanding, all the capital theory that we have is not consistent. It's not like the market outcome is not consistent. The Marxist outcome is not consistent. So the thing is that, even though I'm a pluralist, but I'm not an eclectic, eclecticism. I'm trying to find some way to make sense out of this and actually try to do try to advance our, science. I don't know what to call it. Economics, political economy. Let's say our political economy into something. Okay. So yes, and I would because if you are there is a problem of knowledge and very sufficient too, because if you talk about science too much, you become ignorant policy maker. But I would say though, if you talk about moral too much, you become an ideologue too. So for me, the connection of doing this and make it more consistent and to progress our political economy discussion, I would urge to have more attention on the capital theory. Yes.
So I have another unrelated question, because when you first started, the first thing that came to my mind was actually, because of the link with morality, was actually the price of capital in terms of interest and in terms of usury, which is something that, of course, dropped out of conversation in the 19th century, the idea of usury or price of capital as something immoral. Do you see any connection whatsoever given the role of morality that you're putting into capital discussion?
So you might notice, though, that I assume increasing returns. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if you see that, I have a lot of more paper to write to make it consistent, but I'm writing it. Hopefully I have more opportunity to do it. But morality of the profit rate, yes. Where does it come from? I would invoke Adam Smith again, because in the first 3 chapters that he wrote about, is about the increasing return natures of humanity. So morality, that might be one. So.
Should we use the other one for now?
I was saying that what I found a little bit difficult to follow in your presentation is the feeling that you seems to consider everything conceptually on the same level. When you mean capital theory, or the word even capital, or when you say capital theory is inconsistent, as if, you put Adam Smith, Marx, Piketty, Joe Robinson, as if they were answering the same questions, which they may have not. Just to give you an example, you have approached I'm talking about something that I know more, but perhaps it applied to other things as well. You see, the capital controversy, the Cambridge controversy, originated with a very specific question, and it was the measurement of capital, okay? And then it intervened with the question of growth theory that was developing in those years. And then was Joe Robinson who said we were struggling to find a way to measure capital, and that's when Zrafa produced the book. We saw how to get out of it. So unless you situate a theory in the context in which this problem arises, I think that you will be missing the meaning of why these people were talking about this, what was the strategy that led them to approach the matter one way or the other. I mean, capital, Karl Marx capital, this is another kind of research strategy. It's another type of preoccupation. So I think that if you are if you're doing history of economic thought, the first job is to put concept, theory, and ideas in their context. And then when you compare them, you have to make sure that they are addressing the same questions. And so, I mean, you're picking up a lot on Pasinetti, but Pasinetti came much later on the Cambridge debate. You're talking about the growth theory, okay? So that would be my suggestion, that you contextualize a little bit more the concept and the ideas in order to make sure that they are talking the same language, or they are saying the same things, or they are addressing the same questions. Okay?
Yeah, I admit that I put their context on the theory and each capital controversies. They are different, totally. The socialist calculation debate is totally different than what the capital controversy they are, and we have like a Bomberwork, Clark controversy. We have Frank Knight. We have Hayek. We have Caldor controversy. We have so many of them. Karl Marx has his own controversy with. Either Bomberwork has controversy with Karl Marx too.
But on a different issue.
Yes.
Different issue.
Yeah.
I mean, everything is a controversy in the history of economic thought. That's what the
Yeah. Yeah.
The point is that you have to put controversy at their own historical level, you know? So because they use the word capital, it doesn't mean that they belong to the same narrative, as it were.
Yeah, it's what you call justified. It's fair. Yes,
If
fair.
I had to refer your paper for a journal, I would say you should go a little bit to Duke and learn a little bit of doing history, because that's what a good historian of economic thought should be doing. You situate your controversy in a given historical time. You make sure that the concepts are related to that particular period, and and even if you want to do a broad overview, which is of course nice, you have to make sure that the meaning of one thing does not change when you shift from a paradigm to another. Okay?
Yeah, thank you. It's fair. Yeah.
I didn't want to be patronizing, but I feel that's what should be done. Okay?
Yeah, I understand that that's what historians do, but yeah, very fair. Yeah, I need. It's more like a overview of what I'm trying to do, and I think it's an important project to do. But yes, I did mix all the context together, and I didn't give a good historical evaluation what going on. But I'm trying to say that inequality cannot persist. So, thanks.
I think it's wonderful that someone talks about increasing returns. I think this is really important, and I think that in a long view, we've been struggling with increasing returns ever since the least wealth of nations, and I think the question of how you measure capital is sort of a central issue. In that, you can think of capital as in physical things, like file cabinets or buildings or whatever. Or you can think of capital in knowledge terms, where under well-known conditions that the knowledge is non-excludable. So it's got all sorts of publicness characteristics, and then just sort of think about the problems that you're going to run into. This is really at most elementary level. It's easy to get caught up in the technicalities, and I have certain problems there. Let's think about the provision of weather forecasting. So let's suppose that the weather forecasting is provided by the government and it's free for anybody to use it, right? And let's suppose that the weather forecasts are actually good, they're useful, and so that we can identify the value we can identify the marginal product of the weather forecast. So we can see that the agricultural output goes up when the weather forecasts are good because you can avoid all sorts of catastrophes. Okay, that's all straightforward. You know, this is. Yeah, you can think about knowledge in terms of marginal product, where if it's true knowledge, it'll increase the marginal product. And a really easy example is weather forecasting. If the weather forecast is correctly forecast, then there's going to be less crop damage and all that sort of stuff. So that's real straightforward. It's absolutely elementary. Okay, now let's think about value of marginal product. Can you pick this up with standard econometric techniques? And the answer is, if the weather forecast is given away, its wage is zero, then the value of its marginal product has to be zero. Okay, and so that becomes an interesting technical issue. How do you dig out the impact of a free good on output? And so that the question about whether you're measuring capital and physical goods, which don't have publicness characteristics, versus measuring them in knowledge things, which have dramatic public goods, is going to be absolutely important. And you could see this in the Piketty debates, is that the people who are opposed to Piketty on the right, and I know a lot of them actually, are going to work in physical space. They're going to say, look, poor people have more color televisions. They live longer. They have whatever. They have stuff. So that's all physical. That's all physical stuff. That's not value stuff. That's not the value, because the standard elementary stuff we teach our students is that under general conditions, value marginal product is going to equal the wage. And so if something's given away, as knowledge often is, then it's going to present some interesting technical issues. And I'm sort of embarrassed to say that it took econometricians a rather long time to get the point.
I have a couple questions over here. So, Adrian.
Thank you a lot for your talk. Could you go back a few slides, please, to the theorem by the Japanese economist? I just forget his name. Okashio, yeah.
I didn't mention at all that that's a, Dumini Levy folly.
Sorry, I think it was maybe a few before. You mentioned it in...
This one?
Yes, this one. Could you explain just in a little bit, maybe a kind of quick summary of how the Okashio theorem is supposed to show that the falling rate of profit is not possible?
If I remember correctly, if I remember correctly, he do some maximization of micro foundation of how firm adopt technical progress, and he use matrix algebra and show with something Fabius Perron theorem that if you have those, it's impossible for the rate of profit to go down. So I mean, it's a detail, mathematic details, but you can look at this you can look at Anwar Sheikh book for this, if you like. Sure.
I have George.
Just on that point? The Okishio shows this in the context of the assumption set that he offers, of course. 2 points about this. One, as you no doubt know, there's a massive literature that responds to this and shows, well, under these somewhat different conditions also consistent with Marx, you do get the tendency for the rate of profit to fall. So Okishio's got a model that is contested widely within Marxian theory on these grounds. The second point, though, is you said earlier it's impossible for putting the technical issue aside, it's impossible for the rate of profit to fall because why would capitalists do something that undermines the rate of profit? But of course, that's part of the brilliance of the demonstration in Volume 3 of Capital, that capital is driven to pursue strategies for their survival that nevertheless, as an unintended consequence, can bring about the rate of profit to fall. So there's nothing, the fact that they don't intend for the rate of profit to fall isn't a repudiation of the fact that they can't be induced into strategies that nevertheless lead to the rate of profit falling.
Sorry.
No,
Sorry. Yes, I understand. I know there's way more. I mentioned in the paper about the solution of this. They are Czech solution, real competition solution. They are Cuban solution of like. I can't remember anymore, but there's so many solutions.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree. There are so many ways for the rate of profit to fall. Yes, but I think the Dumesnil-Levy and Foley they use kind of the same assumption, but what they do is that they twist that.
I'm sorry,
They twist the viable technical progress frontier. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm happy to see inequality being talked about. You have three eras here. You have Marx, you have the Cambridge Keynesians, and you have Piketty. And I think you suggested that with Piketty, the discussion of capital is taking place in a new context of inequality. But of course, there was inequality in Marx's day, and there was inequality in the heyday of the Cambridge Keynesians. So what's different about the inequality we have today that makes you say that it's a new context in which inequality is being talked about by Piketty?
Well, there's a empirical research, from the post-war, and then the empirical research in neoliberalism, right? So I think the left one, I took it from modern Marxists. They say that the rate of profit go down, but then on the middle, that's from Piketty himself. I think that's the income of the top 1%. On the whole. So you can see that before World War I, World War II, you have tons of inequality, but with World War I, World War II, you don't have that much until neoliberalism, you have it up, okay? And then the other one, you can see that that's the inequality of 1%. And then on the other one, you have a productivity of labor, and then the compensation of labor. So during neoliberalism, you don't have that go together anymore. And if you go to the rightest one, that's a Piketty one too. That's the profit share and profit share. So you can see that the profit share go up. So that's what I meant by new context. There's a different empirical trend during the post-war and neoliberalism.
I'm so glad we got off the topic of the Okishio theorem because we could have gone on for the rest of the afternoon debating that. I want to ask a question about your repeated use throughout the paper of the word metaphysical in connection with this discussion. Now, I was just looking online, and Joan Robinson, in economic philosophy, she defines metaphysical in this way. She says the hallmark of a metaphysical proposition is that it's not capable of being tested. Now, in light of what George was talking about this morning, probably everything in economics is a metaphysical statement. But the capital controversy that Christina was talking about and that we normally think of as the capital controversy came to a fairly concrete conclusion, and that concrete conclusion is that we cannot explain the distribution of income in terms of some kind of a neoclassical supply and demand mechanism. That doesn't sound like a metaphysical statement to me. So I would put out that point. And the other thing I want to mention very briefly is throughout your paper, you talked about this in the paper, but you didn't bring it into your talk, is that you question the assumption of full employment that the Cambridge Keynesian school makes in its discussion of growth. And that sounds like a really weird kind of assumption to make, right? They're Keynesians, why are they assuming full employment? This gets to the contextual point that Christina was talking about, and that is that, let's just take Kaldor. Kaldor in 1956 was writing when Keynesian economics had come to dominate the way everyone understood the relationship between government and the economy. So Kaldor goes into that discussion of growth theory, assuming that, okay, now we know how to maintain the economy at full employment, so wouldn't any rational government implement those Keynesian demand management policies and keep the economy operating at full employment? Pasinetti is making a slightly different kind of argument. He's stating from the outset that I'm assuming full employment, but I'm emphasizing that it is a normative goal that within the context of my discussion of growth, I'm assuming that society is going to put in place a mechanism that keeps the operation of the economy operating at full employment. They're not assuming it out of nowhere. So Samuelson's teasing of Kaldor and calling him Jean-Baptiste Kaldor is a little bit, it's clever, but it's a little bit of a cheap shot.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, full employment, I actually took that from Joan Robinson. She said that, the full employment position of the Keynesian metaphysical one. But, but then I put it here though, Smith. I mean, I tend to see capital theory as some connection on this, and I know it's a little weird to elevate the discussion to this stuff, but that's my view, and that's my direction that I like to do. I actually like to use a Smith increasing returns to prove something about capital theory, but that's a long project to do if I have an opportunity. But yes, I use full employment as a metaphysical position, maybe normative, but maybe it's the science of man too. So I think I said too much, but talk too little. I mean, what? Okay. Yeah, it's a project that I like to do, and I think it's pretty cool and consistent in a sense. But I need to work harder, if I have opportunity. So, but that's super, what you call fair comment. Thank you.
I'd just like to ask then, since I don't see any other hands up. What do you see as the sort of purpose of sorting out the different theories of capital? And also, this goes back to the question Christina asked about context, because so often the nature of the theory of capital is connected to the nature of the understanding of economics more generally, and also of the topic of poverty. And so maybe I can ask it this way. Some of the authors that you're addressing ultimately are focused not as much on as they are on economic growth and the elimination of poverty, as opposed to the creation of equality. Others are concerned in a wealthy society about the nature of inequality. So how do we connect all those this thing cuts in and cuts out. All those theories of capital, when the focus of the author may actually not be on inequality as a problem or an issue, but they may be focused on other issues like economic growth and poverty issues as opposed to inequality.
I need to admit that, yes, I took it out of the context.
Yeah.
But, capital theory is a lot about the distribution of income and why some people are rich and some people are poor in my understanding of that. So, I assume increasing return, that growth, human nature of growth. I think I have a little bit different assumption than those guys, a little bit on increasing returns, yes. And I take it out of context, exactly, yes. But the capital theory in a nutshell, in a sense, it's determine what you earn. It determine why you have more than the other person. So that's inequality. Equality or not, or what is the rate of return to capital and what is the productivity of labor. So yes.
Well, let's thank him for